Talking a lot lately about Senegal, and I know that's what you'd like to focus on.
Yeah, let's start there. Now, the Senegalese papers have actually run ahead of their official electoral commission there, and they're announcing preliminary results of that election that haven't actually been confirmed. So they have Abdoulaye Wade, of course, the outgoing president, and Macky Sall, as you were saying in the bulletin, head-to-head, really, pretty much level pegging in that first round, going forward into the second round. Now, Le Quotidien newspaper is reporting that, and they also say that if anyone's been a winner from this election, it's been the Senegalese people. Why? Well, because the poll, as they say, went forward peacefully. There wasn't too much violence, and also because the people have got so involved in this electoral process, they say effectively that's prevented the outgoing president Abdoulaye Wade from being able to manipulate it, from being able to carry out fraud, which is what the newspapers are afraid of. That's why they're publishing the results early, because they hope to get in before the electoral commission has a chance, if you like, to manipulate them. That's what they're worried about, and they say that actually that's going to be very difficult if Wade does try and manipulate the results, precisely because the Senegalese people have got so involved in this electoral process. They've taken to the streets, they've turned out in high numbers, they've really got involved in the democratic process. Over in the same paper, Le Quotidien, they're also looking at who is Macky Sall and what can he possibly offer to Senegalese voters in the future. And they're a little bit, well, not entirely over-optimistic about what he might offer, because he was, of course, Abdoulaye Wade's prime minister for a long time. So they're a bit doubtful about whether he can represent a real break with the former president. But they do say he was one of the earliest opposition candidates to join the anyone but Wade movement, if you like, and that we shouldn't let an old man's vanity stand in the way of Senegalese democratic tradition.
Very interesting. And you're also looking at Russia, where apparently there's been a plot to kill Vladimir Putin.
Well, that's what the Moscow Times is reporting on its front page, a plot foiled by the security services to kill Vladimir Putin. Now, at least according to Russian state TV, this was carried out by Chechen separatists who planned to blow up Vladimir Putin's car as he was driving down the road. But the Moscow Times and a number of other papers say they have doubts about whether or not this plot ever really existed, or whether it's a manipulation dreamed up by pro-Putin activists in order to try and build support around him, to create a sense of fear and therefore try and get people out voting for him. The Guardian even goes further by linking it to bombings that happened in Moscow that killed rather a lot of people in 1999 before he was first elected. That was then blamed on Chechen separatists, but there have been suspicions ever since that it might have been carried out by the pro-Putin types in order to try and encourage his re-election, if you like. They've got a profile of Putin in The Guardian today, headlined "Russia's strongman on a knife edge." And what they're saying in there is that he could well expect an upset in this Sunday's election that he hasn't quite, foreseen, and that his long-term plan, which was to consolidate his power again, looks like it's been blown off track.
Well, we've also been talking this morning about Spanish Judge Baltasar Garzón, how he's been acquitted by the Supreme Court over charges he abused his power when investigating crimes committed during the Franco era. But the Spanish papers aren't too happy about that.
No, especially not actually the left-leaning press who back him. Now, why aren't they happy that he was acquitted? That's because the court said that he was wrong to investigate the crimes of the Francoist era. And for the victims who've been waiting for decades to find out what happened to their relatives who died during that era, they were really hoping they would be able to investigate what is currently prohibited by an amnesty law that was passed in 1982 when Franco stepped down. Inside here in El País, they look at the testimonies of people who did lose their loved ones during that time, and they point out that both the people guilty and the people who still have the evidence, if you like, the victims, are dying now, because it was all so long ago. They took to a 97-year-old woman whose baby was taken away from her in prison and given to a regime family because she was known to be a communist. That kind of thing, unfortunately, was common at the time. The Spanish court admits that they would be now considered crimes against humanity, but they still say the amnesty law means it can't be investigated.
That's pretty emotive stuff. And finally, just before, we were talking about ethics in French newspapers, and I believe that in British newspapers, Rupert Murdoch's company's in trouble again.
Yes, just briefly, look at this Guardian front page. They've done the face of Rupert Murdoch as a collage made out of the faces of alleged phone hacking victims under the headline "Power, Corruption and Lies." Now, why is this in the headlines again today? It's because the police, the head police sergeant investigating whether or not journalists at Murdoch newspapers bribed the police, gave her testimony to the Leveson inquiry yesterday. She said there was a systematic culture of police bribing at not only the News of the World, but also at The Sun, which of course still exists and has just launched a Sunday edition, that it was systematic. The Guardian publishes emails today which seem to show evidence for that, and that Rebecca Brooks, then editor, knew about it.
Oh, it's gripping stuff.
It's not a problem that's going to go away for
I
Rupert
don't think
Murdoch.
it is, no. It's good to watch, though. Thank you very much, Elena Casas, there with our update with the international news. Still to come, the great